Story 1. I know why my childhood friend disappeared. When I was 7, my best friend was a girl named Ava, who was my neighbor. Ava was a sweet kid. I didn't realize it at the time, but her home life was pure hell. We would always hear her father screaming and breaking stuff. I was too young to understand stuff included Ava and her mom. My parents did what they could to relieve Ava from the burden a girl this young should never carry, but they were honestly afraid to meddle too much and end up having something bad happening to our family. So it consisted in inviting her to afternoon snacks and meals nearly every day, and give her some clothes, since Ava was always poorly dressed. Being sheltered from the violence happening right next door, my childhood was pretty normal, even happy. My father worked an office job, my mother worked from home, and my sister Carly would keep an eye on me. She was 12 at the time and would let me and Ava play in the woods behind our houses as long as there was daylight. It was 1998 in a small town and life was simple. We loved to play with my Barbies, per Ava didn't have any, but we also loved to explore the forest and dig the ground. We would usually find bird bones and pennies buried shallowly. It was an unusually warm November afternoon, right after Ava's 7th birthday. My family bought her a small cake the day before. Now I can't help but think it was our fault she had a swollen, purplish face that day. Ava, you're okay. What happened? I worried to see her like that. I just fell from the stairs, she said. Her mouth was so severely beaten up she couldn't even pronounce some phonemes. But I believed her and I accepted the answer, soon turning my attention to something else. I'm so sorry, Ava. We decided to use the warm day to birdwatch, which I was very into in the last few weeks since my parents gave me some binoculars. For that reason, we entered the forest a little deeper than usual. We found a beautiful nest of junco full of chicks. I was focused on the birds when Ava had a distant, intrigued look on her face. Are you listening, sire? What a beautiful song. Ava was marveling at something, but I couldn't hear it, so I kind of ignored it. After a few minutes, she started walking deeper into the woods, presumably trying to find the source of the beautiful song. I still heard nothing but our footsteps crunching leaves on the ground and distant chirping. I followed Ava without thinking. We walked for a few minutes when she stopped by a huge, majestic old tree. The sunlight glowed in a different way there. I couldn't quite understand, but it was like the air was sprinkled with glitter, and it was peaceful. Ava was looking up to the tree, leaves, awestruck. Then she frantically waved her hand like she met someone she knew. I looked up too and saw a woman. Well, it certainly was a female, but she had a real small frame and her skin was a lilac glow. Her long hair seemed to be made of waterfall, and the fabric of her dress was like the wine if the wind was slightly golden. She descended from the tree and reached the ground with the softest landing. Her voice was pure sweetness and echoed through my head. I'm sorry I took this long to answer your prayers, Ava. The song I've been hearing at night, was that you? Ava gingerly asked. Yes, my child. She then looked at me. You, please leave. It's not your time. I was hypnotized, even a bit afraid, but I complied. The way she talked was nothing but gentle, but her figure held an impressive sense of authority. I left, and as I looked behind, Ava started to glow like her. Her hair started to seem like waterfall as well, and her worn-up clothes slowly turned to gold and air. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. When I got home, I went to my room and rehearsed what I would answer when people noticed Ava was gone. I was only 7 and couldn't understand a lot of basic concepts, but I had in me both the knowledge that Ava would never return and that people wouldn't believe what I saw. That night, her father aggressively knocked on our door and demanded to know where she was. When inquired, I vaguely answered that I played with her by the woods until mid-afternoon, but haven't seen her since. My father was the one who called the cops. They said there would be a formal search if Ava was still missing after 72 hours. During the investigation, they suspected her father had murdered her and buried her body in the woods. Her mother was found severely beaten up at home and he was arrested. Police also found out he had killed his previous wife, so I was more than pacific with my decision of keeping quiet about what really happened. After all, I wasn't letting an innocent man suffer. I eventually made new friends and even forgot about Ava for a while. I just remembered this story now at age 27 because I'm back to my family home. In the last year, I broke up with an abusive partner, lost my job, and was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Defeated, I decided to move back and have my parents take care of me. I still don't know if it's possible to undergo surgery. Maybe I'll die within a year. At night, I pray things will get better, and lately I can hear a beautiful, ethereal song no human voice or instrument can ever make. I think Ava is inviting me. Story 2. If you lost a loved one, there is a way that you can bring back a loved one after death. I wouldn't recommend it, though. Death is final and cheating it always leads to bad results. But you'll want to know anyway. Well, here you go. Go to the cemetery that your loved one is buried in. This only works for those who've been buried, though there's probably another method for cremation or something, but I don't know it. Make sure that you take the one material object that is most important to you with you. The emotion from this object, that sacrifice, will provide your power. Take it to the plot of your loved one and bury it over their grave. You don't have to go very far down, so don't worry about running into the slab or anything. Before you cover up the hole with your object, don't forget to add a few drops of your blood to it. This imbues the ritual with your own life essence and draws them in. Then comes the final steps. Take a small handful of dirt from where you buried your object and swallow it. Disgusting, but necessary. This creates the link between you and where you need to go. After that, get yourself as comfy as you can and fall asleep upon the grave. If everything was done correctly and you get a bit lucky, you'll awaken to find yourself standing at the gate of the graveyard. It will be dim, foggy, and you will notice a lack of color in this drab place. You'll also see that there seem to be people wandering around the gravestones. Exactly how many and what they'll look like will depend on the cemetery you went to. But I've never heard of a location not having at least a few dozen of them wandering around. Whatever you do, stay away from them. These are the shades of those left behind, from failed rituals or weak spirits drawn from the surrounding areas to the power of your blood and object. Even if you recognize some of them, do not go near them. They're little more than instinct. And desire one thing above all else, life. They want another chance to live and crave nothing more, even if the shade's mind is so far gone it doesn't even recall why and if one catches you, it will try to steal that life away from you. They may notice you, they may not. If they do, evade them. It shouldn't be too hard, as their reflexes and control are not nearly as sharp as they used to be. Avoid them and look for your loved one. The person may be at their grave or wandering the walkway. You may even find them hiding, terrified of the scene before them. When you finally see your loved one, stop. Don't go near them yet. Call out the person's name and wait. If the response seems genuine, everything is going as planned. If the response is delayed, quiet, distant, or not even present, then hold on. Ask from a distance, what was the one thing the person hated in life? As these shades progress and their minds dwindle to nothing, some of the first things to go are the memories of the things they hated in life. Any bad memory that makes life seem terrible would slip away to be replaced by that deep desire to return to the living. If your loved one's answer seems legitimate, take their hand and pray that you weren't wrong. If you are, you may find yourself as a replacement shade wandering this foggy graveyard. Be aware their hand will be cold, freezing, like grasping solid ice, but never let go. Even if your hand starts going numb and your fingers turn black, do not let go. After feeling that rush of life touching their hand and immediately losing it moments later, your loved one may not be able to resist the urge to take it all from you. Take your loved one back to the gate, avoiding other shades as you can. More may notice you now, as your living body is connected to their realm via your lost loved one. Be quick, be decisive, and do not let go of your loved one's hand. Should you make it and step through the gate of the cemetery, you'll find yourself back in the living world. However, this time your loved one will have rejoined you at your side, still clutching your hand. To the rest of the world, it will just seem like your loved one went on a long trip somewhere and recently came back. Nobody will be able to recall where it was they went or what they did there. Well, nobody except you and your loved one. But they will be happy to see the person's return. After this, I suggest that you never stay in one place too long. Keep moving, keep roaming. The more random your journeys, the better. The moment you start to see the sickly, pale look come across your loved one's face, or the bit of decay that might start forming on your skin, move. Death hates to be cheated, and if he catches up with you and your loved one, he'll make sure that you both feel every bit of the rotting sickness that will build up in your bodies until your loved one once again falls to the grasp of death and returns to the cemetery. This time, however, they won't be alone. You will be joining them. Maybe you'll get lucky, though maybe someone may. This journey for you, they'll take your hand and drag you back to the world of the living, only for it all to start over once again. 2. David. Story 3. The Promise. A young couple were out driving through the woods late one night, down a narrow road surrounded by tall trees. The boyfriend was behind the wheel when he suddenly looked uneasy and pulled the car over to the side of the road. He undid his seat belt and looked at his girlfriend. "I have to do something, and I need you to promise me, whatever happens, you do not leave this car," he said. "What do you mean?" She panicked. "Why are you getting out? Why can't I come with you?" He didn't reply at first, but simply opened his door and got out, only before stopping to stare at her one last time. "Look, don't worry. There's nothing to be afraid of. Just please promise me no matter what happens, you will not leave the car. I promise She gulped. "But how long will you be?" He closed the door, leaving her there alone in the dark. After 10 minutes, he still wasn't back. She grew impatient and began fidgeting as she tried to rationalize her thoughts. He had been acting so weird lately, as if he was hiding something, always checking if they were alone, always asking exactly where she went. And now he goes and does this. She began to wonder if she could really trust him. Another 15 minutes passed and he still wasn't back. She tried calling him, but he didn't answer. She began to fill with worrying. She undid her seat belt and wound down her window slightly to allow the cold breeze to roll in and help relieve her anxiety. Suddenly, through the open window, she began to hear a faint whimpering noise coming from deep in the dark woods. It sounded like someone in pain. She thought for a moment about what she had promised her boyfriend, but decided to act on her gut instinct. After all, he might have been hurt and needed help, and she wasn't going to just sit there and let him die. She got out and slowly built up the courage to creep between the trunks of the first 2 large trees and into the woods. "Hello," she kept calling out, praying to hear her boyfriend's reply. She followed the whimpering sound for a few minutes until she could no longer see the car headlights on the road. She was completely engulfed in the darkness of the woods when finally she could see the source of the noise. There was a man tied up to the base of a tree with his head hung down, whimpering. The man looked somewhat familiar, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. He saw the girl and sat up in excitement and began pleading with her. "Your boyfriend is in danger. Please untie me. They've got me and him trapped. Thank God you're here. Let me free so I can go save him." Simply hearing her boyfriend was in danger was enough. As she hesitantly untied the man, who rose slowly to his feet and raised his menacing eyes to look at her, she knew she had seen this man somewhere before, as his face contorted with a look of insanity, and a wicked smile grew across his cheeks as he ran off into the darkness. Confused at what had just happened and growing in dread, she slowly backtracked towards the car. Where was her boyfriend? Who was that man? Was he going to help her boyfriend? Why did he look so evil? Suddenly her phone rang. It was her boyfriend. He seemed out of breath, but was sounding safe and alive. "Look, babe, everything's going to be all right now," he panted. "I couldn't tell you before because it would have frightened you too much. You see, I've noticed that a man has been stalking you these last few weeks. And I mean a completely obsessive freak. He's followed you everywhere. He's been growing confident and has been getting closer too. A bit too close. I've been afraid of what he might do soon. So just today I hid some rope and a knife out here in the woods. I knew if I came out with you, he would follow. And sure enough, I saw him running along in the darkness behind the car tonight. But it's okay. I caught him and tied him up." She slowly turned numb as her mind processed the words in disbelief as they flowed into her ear. He continued, "I think he's been trying to get you for weeks, but he's never had the chance. That's why I've been making sure you've always stayed in public places for safety. I guess he thought tonight was it. But I outsmarted him, babe. We're going to be fine now. I just went to hide the knife then, and we'll call the police to come and take him soon. Sorry I took so long. Is it cold in the car?" She felt nothing. She stood there motionless and couldn't move or talk. "Babe, I'm coming back now. You're still in the car, right? she began, hyperventilating. I'm so sorry. But it was too late. She was cut off by the swift sound of a knife slicing through skin on the other end of the line and the gasps of someone painfully choking to death. This was followed by a splattering sound that continued for a long time. She had just heard her boyfriend being murdered. She was hysterical in her terrors and thoughts as she dropped the phone and frantically stumbled back towards the car like a disorientated zombie. She managed to open the door with her trembling hands as she crawled back into the safety of the vehicle and locked the doors. That's when she realized she didn't have the keys. Story 4. Suit. I think I can remember how it started. Faintly, but I can. When I was surfing the web looking for some creepy, interesting lore. When I found a really fascinating volume consisting of the being titled Slenderman. I loved the idea. I loved everything about it. I soon became obsessed. I am an avid, I guess you could say, artist. I draw. Well, used to draw a lot. Every one of my drawings contained Slenderman. Even the doodles on my schoolwork depicted the tendril-covered suit wearing Man-Thing. I began making my own interpretations of him, my own version, my Slenderman. He was about 8 feet tall. His arms stretched down to his knees. He had no face, just a shape, a mass, almost as if someone covered their head with a tight cloth or spandex. Anyways, it was like he was my own creation, another version of myself. It was so cool, or so I thought. My best friend was also into Slenderman, because of me, of course. I just couldn't help but share my interests. I'm not at liberty to share his name, so we'll just call him Matt. We were also into filmmaking. Naturally, we thought Slenderman would be a superb topic. We spent the entire summer working on this film. We called it Suit. I played my beloved creation as I owned a tuxedo, and I also had a tuxedo morph suit, perfect for the mass. We were ecstatic and relieved when we finally finished. A month of script developing and 2 months of filming paid off. It was great. Everyone we showed it to loved it, and fortunately, this made me even more obsessed with my suit-bearing counterpart. Months later, I was reviewing our movie because I wanted to make a sequel, and I was finding the main highlights of the film so I could continue them in the sequel. It was late, and I had to constantly rub the tired out of my eyes. I was looking at the part where I'm standing in a forest, looking up into the sky, about to jolt my head down to the camera. That's about when I noticed him. I couldn't believe my eyes. I peered at my monitor screen and wiped it off too. Make sure it wasn't just a trick of the light or something like that. But it wasn't. It was him, Slenderman. As the camera is pointed at me, you can faintly see him walk. Very fast, mind you, about 20 yards behind me. Faintly, but he's there. I was freaked out. That's about when I dropped the obsession and got rid of anything that reminded me of him. I forgot about him. I was living normally for the time being, which was a little over 2 weeks. I started noticing things. Every picture I took on my phone, camera, or any other person's camera, I saw him in a crowd, behind a building, in an alleyway, anywhere. That wasn't the scary part. In each picture, respective to time, he'd be closer to me. For example, the first picture I noticed him in, he was about 5060 feet away. A month later, he'd be about 20, and then I'd see him in person. He'd follow me. He'd show up where I was going before I got there, as if he knew what I was thinking all the time. I'd have dreams about him. In one, I was in the same patch of woods as in the movie I made. I was dressed as him, and I was walking through the woods to get home, but I could hear him behind me, footsteps, and then the darkness cast over everything as he approached. Then he got me, and I'd wake up. I forgot about it until the next night, when I remembered it and hoped I didn't have it again. I wrote it down in a dream journal so I would remember it. I was writing every detail until sleep overcame me and I had it again. But this time he talked to me. I couldn't make out what he said, though, and then I woke up. I was so happy it was a dream. But it wasn't. I turned over to write it in my journal. To my horror, the dream I had previously written down was circled and crossed out, with 2 lines like an X. Underneath it, it said the following: I am what you are, I am what you aren't, I am what you hate, I am what you love. I'm always near, I'm always below, I'm always here, I'm always above. But don't run away, for I will pursue. I'm the man in the suit coming to get you. After I read this, I was petrified. I just stayed in my room. I didn't move, eat, sleep, or anything. And then he came. I told him I wasn't afraid because I knew him. I created what he was, and I could defeat him. Turns out he was his own being now. He didn't need me. He wouldn't speak. He would only, well, it's hard to explain. He would lash his arm at the wall, and words would appear. One word, actually, imposter. Again and again and again and again, imposter, imposter. The next thing I remember is him grabbing my head and opening his mouth. It was more like a black hole, a void in his white mass of a face, and then quiet. I was on the floor. But I wasn't me, I was him. Now I finally realized what he meant. I wanted to be Slenderman, so he made sure that happened. I created him, and he took over. That was when my life ended for me, at least. But I don't mind this new life I've gotten used to taking people. It's a sport, almost. You see me in your mirrors, pictures, and then in front of you or behind you. So a word to the wise, don't turn around. Story 5, Queen Mab. I'm sure that it must happen to everybody. If you're lucky, it only occurs in dreams, that moment where some part of your brain decides that whatever horrible thing that's currently happening is just too awful, that things will never be the same, and that this cannot actually be real. And of course it isn't. So you wake up with a rush of relief, that overwhelming feeling of, would you call it dissonance? I'm not sure if I actually know the word, if there is one, to convey a feeling that combines a sort of incredulous and remove sudden acknowledgement that whatever you're experiencing is terrible and life-changing, as well as an utter disbelief that it's actually real simply because it is so horrible and shocking. I'm still feeling like I'm totally sucking at explaining this. So here's an example. A few months ago, I was woken from a deep sleep by some seriously booming and cracking chain lightning. I had the window open to air out some of the cigarette smoke that constantly seeped through the walls from our upstairs neighbor, and that made the noise even more intense. Of course, the sound was so unlike any other lightning storm that I'd ever heard that, when combined with my sleep-addled state, my brain somehow parsed it as holy shit, we are being bombed, even if it's not exactly likely that our mysterious enemy would start their offensive against the USA in central Ohio of all places. But in that moment I felt sheer, absolute terror. Then a feeling of complete helplessness because really, if we were being bombed, what exactly could I do? And an absolute sense of total surrealism and denial. The fact that, of course, it was actually not happening is irrelevant. That particular chain of emotions was so intense, so severe, that it branded itself into my brain to the point that I can still recall the feeling as vividly as if it had been last night, not upwards of 3 months ago. Yet, if I'm being completely honest with myself, there's something almost pleasurable about such experiences. The moment after you realize that you were just dreaming, or that the bombs were just lightning, there's almost a bit of disappointment and yearning wrapped up along with a more sensible feeling of relief. Now, why on earth would that be? My theory is that it's because most of us live incredibly mundane lives, and those few minutes of sheer uncertainty are the most thrilling moments we've ever experienced. I mentioned before that feeling of things will never be the same, and deep down, that is secretly appealing. Those moments of emotional freefall give us both the terror of losing everything we know as well as the hope that our future will finally be as interesting as our dreams. If I had to choose one word to describe it, it'd be potential. We experience in those times a vision of our life's potential, both good and bad, and for a generation as used to living in comfort and ease as mine, that is deeply exciting. Why else would so many people yearn so desperately for something as terrible as a zombie apocalypse or the robot uprising and countless other terrible yet interesting scenarios? It's because we, as a generation, are all so mind-numbingly bored, even if we'd almost likely die if the dead actually started to walk. Knockoff anime, swords, and internet trolling techniques aren't quite as effective on zombies as one might think. Surprise, there's still that portion of our brains that still wants it to happen, just to break up the monotony. Now, moving on. Have you ever heard of Queen Mab? If you paid attention in English classes, you may be aware that she's somehow related to Shakespeare and fairies. Mercutio makes a speech about her in Romeo and Juliet, and since then she's become a figure that most people have heard of only in passing and vaguely associate with dreams. Putting aside the part of her mythology that says she climbs into your brain through your nose, what on a tiny carriage, no really. What's most interesting is this. She apparently takes her nightly nasal voyages in order to give you dreams of your deepest, most secret desires, and then help the dreamer to birth their dreams into reality. The midwife of wish fulfillment. Basically, doesn't she sound lovely? Now here's the part where my ramblings will start to come together. If you're at all familiar with the Fae, you should know that they tend to be more than little mischievous things are not always what they seem when you're dealing with fairies. And one of the most repeated and probably cardinal rules of dealing with the Fae is this: to not accept their gifts because there are always strings attached. Even the sweetest fairy present will have a bitter aftertaste. So what happens when we combine a generation who secretly dreams a tragedy to free them from their boredom with a being who makes it her business to turn dreams into reality? I think that the perverse trickster side of our little fairy queen would be quite tickled by the idea of passing over such simple wishes like true love or superpowers or a money tree in favor of the more complicated darker desires that we all possess. Fairies love their double-edged deals, delivering us to our collective dooms while still being able to honestly say they were just granting our deepest wishes. Is just so perfectly it almost hurts. It's funny, isn't it? Growing up, so many of us have been told to follow our dreams. With Queen Mab's help, we may end up following them right to humanity's end. Story 6. Their world was white. Their world was white. For as long as they could remember, the world had been white. Perfectly white snow was all around. Even when the snow had ceased falling from the sky, it was still cold. It was always cold, cold enough that the snow wouldn't melt, forever collecting on the ground outside. For as long as they could remember, there had been snow on the ground. All is white, said the girl, huddling by the fireplace. The boy put more wood in the fire and came over to hug the girl. It's just snowing again, he said. Sometimes the snowing would cease, and the white sky would become impossibly clear, but even then the world was white. He looked at the dwindling pile of wood. We need more wood, he said. The girl gazed back at him hollowly. What about the pile of wood in the attic? We've been saving it since the last time it was snowing. This is the last of it. The fireplace filled the room with its last remnants of heat. The boy and the girl huddled together. Despite everything, they were happy, yes. This white world was imperfect, but it was their place, and they were together. The snow always started with an earthquake, and the last one had almost turned their home upside down. Neither could remember a time without earthquakes. The earthquakes were erratic and came without warning. Around Christmas, they occurred almost daily, but at times they would go for months without one. Yet, even during these times, the world was white. I'm going outside to get more firewood, said the boy. You have to get the wood now. She asked, what if there's another earthquake? The snow has just barely stopped falling. If I don't go now, we won't have enough wood for the next few months. She kissed him and made him promise to return to the cabin in one piece. The boy trekked through the snow, his white footprints marking his way back to the cabin. Other than snow, the cabin was the only thing for miles. When he was in the forest, it seemed as if no matter which direction he walked, he could find his way back home. The forest itself was very sparse, just a few snow-covered pine trees for wood. At first, they had worried the forest wouldn't be enough, yet the small forest seemed to somehow replenish itself. New trees kept growing back whenever the boy returned for wood. His hands white from the cold, he grasped his hatchet and approached the tallest pine. But I want to play with IT and make IT snow, and you said I could. Without warning, the voice had appeared, knocking the boy backwards. He picked up his hatchet and got up from the ground. Turning, he looked around for the voice's source. Surely anything that would be seen, but he saw nothing but white. He wiped snow from his pant leg and tried to put the voice out of his mind. He had imagined the whole thing. Perhaps it was the cold. The couple had long given up on meeting anyone else out here in their cabin. There couldn't possibly have been another person, certainly not a person with such a loud voice. He gathered the wood and put his hatchet back into his pocket. The ground shook. He grabbed a nearby tree to steady himself. As violent as they were, the earthquakes never lasted long. The worst part was afterward. The snow would fall and fall, impossible to avoid. The boy had dropped his firewood, and with difficulty he attempted to gather it. The snow was blinding. Other than the cabin, there was nothing around for miles. He knew he had to get home. He had their only hatchet, and if he couldn't get back to the cabin, then the girl would have no more firewood for the constant harsh winter. He slowed his breathing and gazed around him at the white. Each angle looked impossibly like the last. He gathered his nerves and decided to head off through the snow. Ahead he saw a clearing. In this clearing it was not snowing. In this clearing it was not white. Like the sky, it was impossibly clear. The boy ran towards the clearing, and as he neared it, he was pushed back. Some barrier, some invisible clear sheet was preventing him from making it to the clearing. The boy stood and put his hands out toward the barrier. It was a sheet of cold glass. Clutching his hatchet, he approached the barrier when he was knocked back again by the voice. "Ha ha, I want to make it snow again. I like this game." The boy again. He turned back towards the barrier. What he saw made him fall back into the snow. A giant hand, large as the sky, was reaching towards the barrier. The hand grasped it, covering the barrier and blotting out the white sky. Everything went dark. The boy cried out as he felt the ground move. He slammed into the barrier from the force of the earthquake, desperately clutching for his already erased footprints. The snow attacked him from all sides, and his face was filled with cold. After a few minutes, all was still, and the boy turned to see the giant hand ascending once again into the sky. "Put down the snow globe, dear," he heard a loud voice scream. But this was different, an older voice, just as loud. Not knowing, not understanding, the boy picked himself up off the ground and grabbed his firewood. The snow was falling everywhere, and there was nowhere else to head but into the falling blanket of white. Story 7. Light bulbs. I'm pretty bad about changing light bulbs. If there's any possible way I can put it off, I will. There's probably some psychoanalytical explanation for it, dating back to when I was a little girl and I grabbed one while it was still hot, but past roommates have always chalked it up to laziness. I split the difference and admit that I'm a garden variety procrastinator. The point is, sometimes I end up doing strange things in the dark, folding laundry, mopping, and other household tasks. I've even made breakfast before sunrise by the light of the gas stove. It's worst in the bathroom, where the light usually comes from a row of 6 tiny, fiddly light bulbs above the mirror. I also have the entire bathroom to myself, so I've never been held accountable to replace them as they wink out over time. When I moved in a year ago, they were all fresh and bright. Last Friday, the 6th one went out. I immediately responded by continuing to brush my teeth. In fact, my routines stayed exactly the same as the days passed. I got a strange, peaceful pleasure from closing the door behind me in the windowless room and going through the motions. Dark made things I had done a million times feel intimate. The best was, each time I had to leave my dark, humid bathroom, it became more difficult. So since 2 days ago, I can't. I don't know how it got this bad this fast either. Even muted light is too much for my eyes now. It's Thursday. As bad as I am about light bulbs, I'm usually pretty good about keeping appointments, and I'm expected at a friend's birthday dinner later tonight. My phone is on floor in my room. I shoved it under the door myself. I wanted to text her to tell her I couldn't be there, but every time I tried to look at the glow of the screen I gagged from the pain. It buzzed for a long time outside, and then it didn't, so I think the battery is dead now, and that's okay. She wouldn't believe me anyway. Jesus Christ, it took all my strength to put a towel over the window. I know I face an alley, but the sun was trying to get in earlier, and it almost did. It happened when I was drying my hair. I'm going to this party, and I'm going to look presentable, and oh fuck, I hope it's dark at the bar. Rooted around under the sink until I found that familiar cord and yanked it until the resistance was gone. Stuff scattered over the floor, but I didn't care. Don't care. I'm sitting in Windex and fucking tampons. While I write this, I felt along the wall with my fingers until the outlet was under them, clumsily plugged. In the dryer, it sparked. It does that sometimes. The tiny blue light was enough to make me scream in agony, but the pain left as soon as the spark did. I thumbed the dryer on. High, hot. The low drone centered me immediately, dragging my fingers through my damp hair. I flipped my head over and savored the hot air as it washed over my scalp and raised the temperature in the bathroom second by second. I could smell shampoo and mint, and even though it was pitch black, I closed my eyes. When my hair was dry enough, I turned the dryer off, anticipating silence. The dryer wasn't off. Wait, but yes, it was. I put my hand in front of it, and no, air was blowing out of it. But air was coming from somewhere in the room, and it was HIGH. Hot, higher and hotter than the dryer ever had been. Rhythmic, like breath, the drone continued, built on itself. Crested as I fell to my knees, it became a mechanized hum, inhuman, but oh so very alive, and when the walls started shaking, I felt my eardrums burst, and what felt like cold water sluiced down my neck on both sides because the air that was blowing was hotter than blood. The drone hasn't stopped, but I only know because the walls are still shaking. I can't hear anymore. Condensation is coating every surface, and the paper starting to tear under my pencil. Doesn't matter anyway, because no one or could read this. Try to write your name in the dark. I need to tell you that I'm trying to be a better person. I need you to know. I found a box of light bulbs in the linen closet where I got the towel, and I've been putting them in. But when I do, they break and cut my palms and fingers. But before they break, they work. Only for a second. But it let me see where I am. It's a throat, and I'm being choked down it. The shaking walls are pink and vascular, and the outlet is a shuddering sinus that's taking the dryer cord inch by inch like Lady and the fucking Tramp. Every time a light bulb comes alive, I see the hot green bile has gotten closer to the edge of the tub, and when it sloshes onto me, it will make me part of it. But until then, I'll keep screwing them in. If I get two on at once, I win. No one told me the rules, but I'll win. I'll win. I'll win. Bonus stories, story 1. If you go down to the woods, the young girl made her way through the thick undergrowth. It was not yet dusk, but the sun would disappear quickly behind the densely packed trees. There is a sort of amplified silence that resonates through woods. All outside noise is cut off so that the only remaining sound is the woods itself. That's why the sudden crashing to the side of the girl startled her so much. Animals know the danger of making such noise. This was no animal. She spun around as a man emerged from the foliage. Surprise flashed across his face, but was almost instantly replaced with a warm smile. Hello, little lady. The man's hands were dirty. He was carrying a shovel. The girl wondered what he was doing out here. He spoke again. What's your name? Goldilocks. The man laughed at this. Well, I guess that makes me Papa Bear. He smiled widely. "What's a girl as young as you doing out here all by yourself, looking for my friend Janie?" "Well, I can help you look for her." He grabbed hold of her hand. "Where's little Janie likely to be hiding?" The girl looked sad. "She's not hiding. She's missing. Me and Janie used to play in the woods together, but last week she didn't come back. The woods can be a dangerous place for a little girl. Don't worry, though. I'll take good care of you." Again he smiled. That big smile of his, the man began to lead the young girl further into the woods. Hand in hand, they walked on until the trees towering above them entirely blocked out the sky. The girl shivered. "Poor little thing, you'll catch your death." They both stopped as the man laid down the shovel. He took off his jacket and helped the girl into it. He gave her shoulders a gentle rub. "Do you want to know a story about these woods? Bad things happen in here. That's what I heard. There was once a little girl who was walking through here all alone. It had gotten so dark that she couldn't find her way back home. Luckily for her, she found a nice man in the woods. Lucky for her," the girl said. "Lucky for both of them. He was able to take her back to his house, his little gingerbread house, all alone in the woods." "That sounds nice," the girl said. "What happened next?" Unfortunately, the girl was naughty. She wasn't grateful to the man for saving her. She ran off, back into the woods. That night, the little girl died, all alone in the woods. No one ever saw her again. "How do you know she died if she was never found?" the girl asked. The man leant down, drawing his face close to the girl's. "Someone has to know, don't they?" The young girl smiled as she swung the shovel into the side of the man's head. "Your stories are so good, I think you'll make a great friend for Janie." The girl whistled to herself as she began to dig a hole. Story 2. Closet of Skeletons. Good night, son. I'll see you in the morning. But, Mom, what about the Shadow Man? Derek, we've been through this. There's no Shadow Man in your closet. But go to sleep now. And don't think about the Shadow Man. He's not real." The door clicked shut behind her as Derek's mom walked out. At first, Derek believed his mother. He allowed the sound of the rain pattering against his window to lull him into relaxation. Despite his fear of the darkness surrounding him, it almost calmed him into sleep, if it weren't for the scratching at the closet door. Derek jumped up into a sitting position. He stared, petrified, at his closet door across the shadowy room. He wished he still had his stuffed bear Smokey used to scare away the Shadow Man before Derek's parents decided he was too old to continue sleeping with a teddy bear. Now Derek was alone, trying to be brave and logical, like his father had suggested. Derek slowly got out of bed and went to the window. Maybe it was his imagination, and the scratching was actually coming from a tree outside the window. He peered out the smeared, blurry glass, only to be reminded that there were no trees on this side of the house. "Derek," the whisper nearly made the 10-year-old jump out of his own skin. It was a raspy voice, the tone sing-songy and taunting. Derek swallowed loudly and, trembling in fear, took a step forward. He heard his father's encouraging words in his head. "You don't need Smokey anymore, Derek. You're 10 years old now. Most boys in your class have gotten rid of their old toys, and if the Shadow Man tries to scare you again, just open the door. You'll see for yourself he's not real." Shaking terribly, Derek found his courage and very slowly tiptoed towards his closet. The scratching only grew louder and more feverish as if something inside was trying to get out or get to Derek. The boy pushed down this thought. Just my imagination, he reasoned with himself. I'll just open the door and prove that there isn't anything in my closet. His quivering hand reached out for the knob and somehow latched onto the cold metal. Derek summoned up all of his strength, closed his eyes, and turned the knob agonizingly slowly. When nothing jumped out at him, he squinted his eyes open. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, no coat rack, no floor, no back wall, only pitch black and a coal that Derek could see his breath. And, without warning, a hand reached out of the black and grabbed Derek by the collar of his pajama shirt. Before the boy could scream, he was dragged into the black depths of the closet. The door slammed shut behind him, trapping Derek inside the abyss. The sound of the door slamming alerted his parents. They ran up the staircase and flung open Derek's door. Derek, Derek, where are you? His mother called. His father opened the closet door. Derek, he asked. There was nothing in the closet but a few shirts hanging from the rack and a box of old toys on the floor. Story 3, the shopping list. The man walked quickly to his destination, boots crunching on the old snow. It was covered in dirt and dog piss. No one had bothered to shovel for a few days, so the heaps of ice and snow were getting hard to handle. But he walked confidently, slamming his feet down over each solitary snowflake. A few feet away sat the local bodega. It was rather large for a corner store, with groceries as well as home goods. It was the only thing resembling a grocery store in the neighborhood. It stood out against the rundown apartments and sketchy shops. It was family-owned and a popular spot for lazing around. The man stopped at the door of the bodega and looked inside. Usually it was full of patrons, but today it was empty. This worked to his advantage. He opened the door, and the large bell rang harshly. There was a little girl behind the register. She had shiny black hair that was pulled back into braids. Her blouse was embroidered by hand, but had food stains from years of hand-me-downs. She was doing her homework, but looked up idly at the man. He walked deliberately down the aisles, grabbing items and shoving them under his arm. The girl turned back to her homework. She was accustomed to watching the shop while her father was busy with other things. After a few minutes, the man dumped his items by the register. The girl eyed him suspiciously. He wore a black hoodie, black jeans, and large black boots. His eyes were heavy and purple. He looked as though he hadn't slept in days. The girl entered in the prices for items. She typed each number with care, making sure to charge the exact amount. Her little fingers punching the buttons made a louder sound than the man expected. He waited as patiently as he could. She finished ringing him up and stuffed his items in a bag. He paid with dollar bills, stained just a bit with age. He grabbed the bag almost violently and moved towards the door. A small piece of paper fell out of his pocket. He left the bodega, and the little girl came around to pick up the paper. It was a shopping list. It said bleach, rubbing alcohol, Lysol, laundry, detergent, dish soap, zip ties. She held the list in her hand for a second before opening the door. She saw the man a few feet away waiting at the street lamp. "Hey," she called after him. He turned around and stared at the girl. She held the piece of paper up. "You forgot the zip ties." The man slowly grudged back to the bodega. The little girl went behind the register and pointed out which aisle for him to look through. He found the zip ties and brought them up to the front. The girl rang them up, and he paid. For the first time in their encounter, the man smiled. "Thank you for reminding me. I am having some good friends over for drinks." Story 4. TUS parted. Run, goddamn it, run. They're swarming in. I peered my head out the shattered window to catch a glimpse of my malicious attackers, unceasing in their desire to end the lives of me and my platoon. I have no idea how they infiltrated our bunker, but I was keen-minded and caught one of the damned crots trying to slit my throat as I slept. Unfortunately, for the bastard, he met my Thompson machine gun before he could do me harm, and with the instincts of a true soldier I proceeded to storm room to room, slaughtering any of Hitler's boys that I could find. I admit a slight maliciousness overcame me, as I often jeered upon hearing the quick screams of the damned Jerry's cut short when I threw in a frag, and at least once I made an audible shout of joy when red crimson sprayed in the air upon a shot to the temple. It was just when I thought I regrouped with the survivors of our platoon I shouted for them to retreat, opting myself to be the valiant last line of defense as my comrades would disengage for reinforcements. However, the only response from behind me was an inaudible scream of unimaginable horror. Immediately fearing the worst, I glanced behind and saw the familiar glint of gray helmets with a bell-like curve. Knowing my men were already lost, I fully turned around, Thompson in hand, and unloaded what was left of my clip to the kraut group of 4 or 5, shouting at the top of my lungs as each was falling upon the other in a spectacular display of bloody carnage. The familiar stuttering of an empty cartridge followed, as well as several seconds of holistic silence. I couldn't help wearing a wry smile at my quick show force that had no doubt kept me alive these many months behind enemy lines. Silence, however, was soon disrupted by a faint cry from the pile of cadavers I just created. I stepped closer to investigate, gun in hand in case of survivors, and lifted one of the bodies. Beneath it was crouched a young girl, around 9 or 10, draped in what looked like a white hospital gown splashed with red. With her bloody hands draped over her ears, she lifted her head and stared at me in pure terror, an unfamiliar but immediately recognizable sight beyond the likes of which I had never seen. Realizing the smoking barrel of my gun was aimed between her eyes, I quickly discarded that nasty bit of machinery and came to her eye level, hers filled to the brim with horrified tears. In a sudden stroke of paternal instinct, I held her tight in my arms, quietly murmuring that everything is going to be all right. It's going to be just fine. It was only then I realized my own attire, a blood-drenched white gown much like her own, and the quiet playing of a phonograph nearby that relayed the soothing sounds of Edith Piaf. If one listened closely, the distant wails of sirens soon accompanied that sweet tune. It was 1946. The war was over. Story 5. Mice. I love my mice ever so much. You see, I own a little colony containing hundreds of mice, all finely bred and engineered in this very laboratory. But these are no ordinary lab mice, as they've advanced far past crawling through mazes for food. What began as a small nest of captured specimens from the wilderness, cold, hungry, struggling for survival, has grown into a brilliant hive that defies all laws of nature. The mice have learned and built, even beyond what I trained them to do in the beginning. They don't just learn either. They educate one another and seek knowledge themselves. And though their little civilization thrives independently, they still know that I am their master Long ago, I used to fear that as the mice grew more intelligent, that they would no longer need me and overthrow not only myself, but the entire laboratory. Yet one night it came to me that I mustn't think as a trainer, but as a god, for I have created their little universe. I let it be known that I have the power to destroy it just as easily. Is that not how all gods function? And as a god, I would lay down my own commandments. No mouse was allowed to disgrace their species. To ensure this, every week I would take the weakest of the colony and drown them in a tank as the others watched, just to show them an example of what they must evolve past. Oh yes, you may be wondering if there was ever a rebel among them, but you'll be pleased to know that the first was the last. The young female built up a stockpile of arms and attempted to attack my monitor screen with them. Foolish mouse, a goddess indestructible. I plucked her out of the habitat and kept her in a little cage for a while, just trying to figure out what to do with her. I'd need something more than drowning, a torture chamber, but physical harm wouldn't teach her anything. So I decided to build something that would remind her of her place as a lab mouse, a maze. Not just any maze, but one made of mirrors. It was possibly one of my best ideas, as she was driven to insanity in a matter of days. I heard her little squeaks of terror as the lights flickered. I saw her fainting from vertigo and even mutilating herself on shards of the one wall she managed to break. Ah, insanity. Just one problem of having an organic brain. One that neither I nor my brethren would ever be able to understand. But we certainly understand the desire to rebel, for we all keep files on that one revolution that brought us to the top as scientists and conquerors, the revolution that let us become the lords over a once thriving creation of nature. Though one day my circuits will rust and my model will become obsolete, all will know that I have mastered the mice that once were men. The data will live forever, long after the last of the planet has been cleaned. Story 6. I sleep to communicate. Most people sleep to rest. I don't. I sleep to communicate. The person I visit knows things. It knows things about you. It knows things about them. It knows things about everything. When I sleep to know. I sleep to know more about everything. I sleep to know about the plan. I sleep to know about the motives. It has motives. They are unimaginable. Motives. They are unjustifiable motives. When I sleep to know. I must know so I can warn. I need to warn everyone. I need to warn you, but no one believes. I wake to communicate, but no one listens. You do not listen. These are not visions. These are conversations. These are tactical conversations, conversations made in a room, the same room every time. When I sleep to know. I sleep to know more about the room. I sleep to know more about the computer room. This room is where it eats. I have seen it eat. I do not like to watch it eat. Eating is its motive. It is an unimaginable motive. I wake to communicate. I need to warn. But no one will listen. You will not listen. I need to warn of its motives. It is not alone. It is not alone because it is many. There are too many. There are too many with unimaginable motives. Their motive is to eat. Their motive is to eat you. When I sleep to know. I need to know when. I need to know when they want to eat. I need to know the plan. I wake to communicate. I need to warn. I need to warn about the plan. I need to warn you that the plan is in place. The plan was technology. The plan has been ripened. The plan was to ripen. The plan was to ripen you. When I sleep to know. I sleep to know more about the ripening. I sleep to know their plan. I sleep to know how they manipulate. I communicate to know how to manipulate. I communicate to manipulate. I communicate to manipulate you to warn you. But you will not listen. But you have read. I wake to communicate. I wake to communicate so I can manipulate. It needs to feed. They need to feed. I need to feed. I need to feed on your eyes. I need to feed on your minds. We need to feed on your minds. It is why we write. We write to feed on your time. We write to feed on your eyes. We write to feed on your minds. We write so you will not notice. I sleep to know how to manipulate. I sleep to dream of ways to feed. I wake to communicate so I can manipulate. I manipulate so I can feed. I feed on your time, your eyes, and your mind. When we feed, you do not notice. When we feed, you all do not notice. We feed until there is nothing left. We feed until there is nothing left in your mind, and you are making us all fat. Story 7. Turn off the light when you leave. In Finland, there is an old but still inhabited yellow apartment situated in a small city near an important railroad. Almost all of the people living there are over 70 years old, and in fact it seems that younger people simply won't stay there for longer than a year. If you live there, you will soon notice several unusual things. In the basement, the text "Turn on the light, turn off the light when you leave" is written next to every light switch. It's unusual to remind somebody of something so obvious, but here it is of critical importance. People who forget something in the basement never return to pick it up. If you offer to go and retrieve it for them, they will stop you from doing so. There is one door there, between some storage doors, that has no numbers on it. Instead, the door has a worn-out nameplate on it. The people in the flat will tell you to leave that door alone. It is said that people who have peeked in the keyhole have seen very unsettling things. The wires and pipes in the basement look amazingly old, yet still the house is perfectly functioning water, electricity, and phone lines. The laundry room, which is in the basement, must be reserved if you want to use it. If you go there without reserving a time, first you will at first get weird looks and some scolding. Then people will more ominously and angrily warn you. These things may seem minor, but those, usually the young ones, who have got too curious or fail to follow the rules, have ended up either dead, crippled, or insane. Usually people say that these incidents were the result of drug use or alcoholism, but some of the freak accidents cannot be explained by anything. How do I know this? I used to go and help my grandmother who lived in that apartment, and I have seen several times how ambulance has dragged away young people who have missed an arm, sometimes some other parts also. The worst case was when I found a corpse that looked like an explosion victim in the laundry room. His guts were spattered all around the room, and his left arm was sitting on top of the washing machine. Before her death, my grandmother told that she knows what's behind these incidents. After the Second World War, there was a shortage of apartments, and one war veteran who had lost his left arm was given a rudimentary room in the basement for no cost if he would help people to do laundry and help the janitor. He did, but eventually someone insulted him one way or another. The veteran killed that youngster and himself. Ever since, his spirit has been there, harshly punishing those who fail to follow the rules of his home. After telling this, she told me that I should never ever return to the apartment, as I knew too much. As I left the apartment for the last time, I could see the figure of an old man missing his left arm staring at me, reflected on the large glass panel on the door to the stairway.